things we did agree on. I think a lot of us were kind of surprised because it went contrary to our first impressions, but we ended up deciding we preferred the single path rather than the double path, partly because of having the wider path. It was pointed out that there might be emergency situations where you need to have an ambulance be able to pull up to it or something like that. Partly in terms of visibility, having people, less likely that somebody's going to be sort of invisible from the street and that kind of thing. So a number of different reasons that we all ended up agreeing that we pretty much liked the single path rather than two. Didn't really see any arguments in favor of the two, even though it kind of struck several of us as the first reaction that might be what we'd want. Let's see, the other part of the single path that we liked was the notion of having the wider spots along the sidewalks on the street, so that if you are walking up along the street, you've got a place to sort of pull over to the, walk over to the left to get around somebody with a stroller or whatever, that kind of thing. We also liked the wall. We thought that the illustration there was kind of attractive, and it helps to define the areas and also helps provide places to sit if you happen to have a bunch of people meeting there while they're waiting for the ferry or something of that sort. In terms of the signage, we like the idea of the sign at the lower end of it, but then supplemented by some signage up in the northwest corner at that wide spot. We did talk about sort of liking a little bit bigger plaza, as in this drawing in the upper corner, a little bit bigger maybe than is over there, so that would be something that might be incorporated from the one drawing into the other. Let's see, water fountain, yes. Doggy waste containers, yes. One thing we didn't quite get a consensus on, we had at least one holdout for saying he'd really like to see a little bit of a lawn somewhere.
No.
But
no.
We beat him up.
We beat him up.
He's
yeah.
already left.
Okay, I think that was, anybody else have anything to add?
No, that's
You indicated, along with liking the larger space, the one path seemed to accommodate at both ends of kind of the pathway, the larger space, as well as like the idea that the sidewalk along the road could be expanded a little bit in spaces so that people weren't right up against the cars. There was a little concern that the 4-foot fence may not be high enough for safety. However, also in discussion, if the vegetation leading up to that 4-foot fence was not something that you were going to have a lot of traffic on, that may be enough combined with the 4-foot fence that would be appropriate. Similar to comments on signage, I think people thought that it was nice to kind of have both sets of signage, so something at the corner that might be visually appealing, but certainly as people are coming up to the path, if it's just at the corner, they may miss kind of the signage welcoming them, so having potentially signage both there. There was a suggestion to use pervious concrete to allow for water to pass through and to prevent skateboarding, less attractive to the skateboarders, and another suggestion that maybe the pathway would be more like a boardwalk. There was a concern that the rocks might become a little bit of playground equipment, but John Paul's suggestion that maybe there's some artwork that's incorporated as a part of the rocks or some of that sort of stuff may kind of make that a little bit of a prevention. Certainly, concerns about the safety of the ravines. So this, the feedback from the group is just, obviously the more that we can keep people from being around the ravine, probably safe. Similar to the comments over there, stone wall was visually appealing, and so it was an attractive element. We had some suggestions, and we actually have some design concepts from Ryan here on using benches that are kind of more artistic or creative in nature. Also a suggestion that we would have the guardrails could be more artistic than just maybe a guardrail. And the suggestion was, if you're familiar with Danger, the store Danger downtown that has kind of the cutout metal you know, that something like that may be a little bit more attractive than just the standard guardrail. And then a specific suggestion that we need signage to deter cyclists from using path or some type of barriers to keep that from the cyclists up on the path for pedestrians. And then also a suggestion that if there's a way to accommodate cyclists better along the outer perimeter of the site, certainly would like to try to accommodate cyclists around the outer perimeter.
This only came after we realized that the element we all agreed was our favorite of all was the rock wall with integrated benches into that. So once we settled on that as being a priority for us, then the single wider path became a necessity, factoring in sitting on a bench, looking at a kid in a stroller. You still need space to get by. One of the I have to look at my own notes. We also like the larger gathering path, or place, and even though we may not really call it a gathering place, if there's an educational component to the project, which we also thought was really important, and it might be nice to take that larger space and move it over to the other plan somewhere. An educational component was considered critical to help teach the community and visitors to the island why we built something like this. Out of respect for what's already there and how we managed an interesting challenge. We liked big rocks. Put that on the list somewhere. Big rocks, please. And
hey Kelly, when
yes,
does
sir.
a rock become a boulder?
I don't know. I don't know. It depends. If I can pick it up myself, it's a rock. I think that's it for our design. As far as information goes, we had a productive conversation about signage. We like waterproof signs that would enable, there was a discussion about the walkabout guide that's available now in town, making that available and keeping that restocked so people would have that to move forward. There was even discussion about digital interactive signs so that someone could come up, touch, and play with the sign and find what they were looking for in town as being an interesting solution as well. What's that? Oh yeah, and we talked about maybe a QR code on a sign somewhere. You can zap that with your smartphone and follow that through town. And I got that idea from Rex. So that might actually be their idea at table number 1. Some of the challenges that we thought were the lighting, but I think that challenge is mitigated a little bit because we had a conversation with John Paul. But I guess the one outstanding challenge that we thought would be not that commuters would use that path for cycling. Commuters wouldn't necessarily use that area, but we sort of envisioned tourists coming off the ferry on their bikes, hitting that intersection, and then sort of pulling over to see what they could see on that site and clogging things up a little bit. So managing the first-time cyclist to Bainbridge Island, especially if it's a group, I think is going to be important. There was one other thing I wanted to speak about really quickly. The sign. We absolutely preferred in spades a sign at the lower portion of the south green space.
Okay.
Yeah, down there. We didn't like the one that basically that sign that's on that one now looks like the people who are going to see the Welcome to Bainbridge Island sign the most are the people who are leaving. So,